I love strategy days. They are awesome for lighting a fire for the team, but they are terrible at creating the rhythm that keeps the fire burning once everyone goes back to reality, right? Back to life, especially when work has been put off or put on hold just to make that day happen. Now, I've watched this happen with a retreat that I co-hosted recently, and it wasn't a Strat Day, but it did create this fire metaphor. So we gathered an awesome group of people together from across Australia, and our crew built an amazing fire, a literal one, right? And also the metaphorical one. Everybody felt the heat and everybody left energized and full of intention. But then everyone returned to their busy lives and we haven't properly reconvened. Now, I scheduled one post-event gathering and an abysmally small percentage of people committed to coming. So the fire is already going out. And I'm standing here inside this pattern and not outside pointing at everyone else. Today, I want to show you what happens after everybody walks away energized and the essential elements that a ritual needs to keep that fire alive, not just for weeks or months, but indefinitely. So the problem isn't the quality of the day. It's what happens after the day. And what do you set up on the day to make that happen? So the fire isn't usually built by the whole team, right? It's built by the business owner, the founder, the leadership team, or a small internal crew, sometimes with the help of a facilitator to do the work. Now, we can spend weeks building the perfect Strat Day or the metaphor bonfire, right? Now, you don't start building a bonfire by throwing a great big fucking log onto the ground and trying to light it with a match. You've got to build it. So when we build it, we start with some kindling, blue kindling. These are the surveys, the tensions, the raw ideas that your people will contribute to what the day might solve. Then we add the sticks. Now there's some smaller ones, some bigger, slightly thicker ones, right? We build this lovely fire ready to burn. Now, these sticks are the early conversations that have to happen, the exercises that get people building rapport. It's the food, it's the fun, it's the connection, it's the shared experiences. These things start creating that trust or restarting it, rekindling it. And when you get this and you light this and you get this burning, it generates enough heat for it to properly catch. So once it's caught, then we can put on the big logs. I'm not going to color them because for some reason it wipes it out. So we can put on the big logs once it's burning. Now, these big logs are the key priorities for the day. They're the hard conversations, they are the decisions, the strategy work, right? This is the things that the day is meant to address. Now, by the end of the day, this thing is freaking roaring, right? Roaring, roar, right? Great big rip-roaring bonfire. But while we put an enormous effort into progressively building that fire, designing the day, there's almost no thought goes into how to keep the fuel flowing into the fire, how to keep people gathering around it, or how tending it becomes something that a team can own once everyone disperses, because everybody disperses. They return to reality. Clients still need things. The inboxes have filled up even more. There are even more deadlines. Busy lives and busy businesses steal attention back. Now, that concentrated environment that supplied the heat disappears. So some of the heat naturally disappears too. Now, the wider team experienced the fire and were warmed by it, right? But for many of them, they weren't responsible for building it. So they probably don't feel responsibility to keep it alive. Now, as a leadership team, as leaders, we designed the ignition, but we didn't design how tending the fire would become something that the team could own together. And the team can't be expected to keep that fire burning, to put fuel on it, to keep it alive, if they were only invited to stand around it. Yeah. So the Strat Day may have worked brilliantly as a day, but its implementation ended too soon. So the implementation blind spot is assuming that the energy that's created on the day is going to somehow magically carry itself forward for the next year. Again, we designed ignition, but we didn't design what was going to sustain it. And that's a problem, because here's what that looks like. We've got the build and the Strat Day, and all the heat and the focus and the apparent alignment that the day creates, the heat of that fire creates. And then everybody walks away and normal pressure returns. And the reality is nothing stays the same. Everything is always in a state of decline. So this path, as well as intended as it is, declines, right? So sustaining it is not simply adding more logs on the fire to get this thing to burn hotter longer. It's creating repeat moments, right, where we regather, more fuel, more fuel, more fuel, more fuel, regather, more fuel, coming back together around the memory of it, so that the warmth and the participation builds the shared ownership and it grows, okay? It can grow with intention. Now, I talk about the reality distortion field in some other of my content that leaders create, and it's good and it's bad. And nowhere is it more apparent than on a great strategy day. Because in that room, in that venue, the team gets fully Care Bear blasted by the charisma and the conviction and the sheer will of the leader or leaders. Because often there's more than one person with that power. And meaning is supplied physically. Energy is supplied physically. There's a frequency. There's an uplift. And it's synthesized, unreal, but it's there, and it can blur friction that existed before the day. Things that may have previously felt heavy suddenly feel absent, smaller, or solvable, right? And they're temporarily forgotten. Reality bends around leaders in these gatherings, and that's cool, right? People behave differently because of it. The energy is artificially stimulated, right? So when everybody returns to reality, the friction returns too, right? That reality distortion field didn't necessarily resolve the things. And for a while, it made them feel just a little bit more difficult to see. So the question isn't only, how do we keep this energy that the day created alive? What the fire, right? It's, what did the day genuinely resolve? And what did the field in the room temporarily override, right? What did the fire temporarily override? Now, if we ritualize what came out of the day purely, are we sustaining a real shift? Or are we just trying to preserve that artificial high? So a Strat Day may take a look at purpose, positioning, culture, values, customers, or a whole raft of other things, right? That are really the foundations of the brand. But touching those things is not the same as pulling them together into a coherent, ongoing strategic framework. So we're going to talk about rituals, and I love rituals for this because they are amplifiers. They help something live repeatedly in the culture, become alive. They help bed things down. They help embed or create habits that we want for our team, right? That make our brand stronger. But if the foundations are not right, if they never were, or if they're not connected, or the rituals are not connected to that, you end up ritualizing the wrong things. And we're going to talk about cadence in a moment. It's a key part of rituals, and it can make the wrong activity consistent. So a ritual can make the wrong thing culturally embedded. So there is a plan for getting to the heart of these frictions as and when they happen, not simply relying on a Strat Day to solve problems or the decline that happens between them. And it's underpinned by having solid strategic foundations. That is where our electromagnetic brand plan comes into play. And I'm going to come back to that later, but if you're curious and you want to have a look at it, take a look at the link in the description. Okay. Now back to Strat Days. Again, I love them. I mentioned that. They are strong for generating ideas and connections, and good ones can lead to genuine decisions being made, but the agenda usually ends with the decision being made on the day. A decision doesn't automatically become behavior. And one instance of a behavior is definitely not culture. For a decision to enter the culture and become part of it, it has to become a behavior. And that has to be one that can be repeated. So for this, let's have a look at our framework for what a well-designed ritual actually contains. These are our rituals of rituals, and there are 7 of them, and I'm going to go through them with you briefly. R is for relatable. I is for intentional. T is for timed. U is for universal. A is for aligned. L is for lived. S is for sustained. Now, I don't want to overwhelm you with this whole framework right now. We're going to look at the key elements you need to know today. If you want to go deeper, there is a deeper walkthrough of this model, and it is in the description. So check it out. Right now, we're going to look at the R.I.T. Okay. First, relatable. Now, this means that it has to make sense for your team and connect with what you've already talked about. So what was decided on at a Strat Day or a gathering, this is the shared concept, right? Not a new concept that you're just trying to impose on people. It's what everyone understands. So it is a shared concept for your team. Okay. They need to understand it. I is intentional. In this, it means that it needs to have a very clear purpose. The ritual needs to transform or strengthen something that everybody agrees matters. Okay. So this is a clear purpose, intention, clear purpose. Now we have timed. This is where we talk about cadence, right? So it does need a real place, time, or trigger where it actually happens, right? So it is a trigger or time, right? It has to be on the agenda somewhere. Now, these are the 3. So when we think about relatable, if we'll have a shared concept, so we all know what it means, what it is. We all know why, what we're trying to achieve with it, the purpose, and we know when, and it's a regular cadence, then we can prioritize it, we can get it done. So these 3, once you get it, you can actually land a ritual fairly strong. The other ones are important, but this is the basics, okay? So the reality is, though, that people will jump straight into timed. Right? They think that if they put something in a calendar, they make it weekly, they make it recurring. Yeah, sure, it gives you a cadence, and that cadence does create consistency, but you can also be consistently terrible at the same thing, or consistent at something that doesn't even matter, right? So without it being relatable and intentional, people can turn up every week, go through the motions, eventually just get bored or don't pay it any mind, right? Blank ticking the box. So this is where the optimization brain comes into play, especially now. We jump into AI, we automate stuff, and then that can really destroy a culture ritual opportunity. Yes, we need to keep putting wood on the fire, right? Metaphorically. And we can easily build a conveyor belt that automates and drops another log on the fire, right? We can respond to that fire a particular way, automate the whole thing. And we've got ourselves a infinitely burning fire, right? We've definitely solved the fueling the fire thing, except there's one big problem here. Nobody's fucking there to get warmed by it. The problem of the fire was never to burn wood effectively or efficiently, right? It was to bring people together again and again, let them soak in that warmth and reconnect what the fire is actually representing at that moment. So you have 2 key jobs here with the rituals. The first is keep putting wood on the fire. Yeah, we have to do that. But the second is keep bringing people back to it. Now, process can feed the fire, sure, But a living ritual creates meaning, it creates ownership, it creates devotion that gets people back around the fire. I mean, ritualizing anything will get you consistency, but again, you can be consistently shit, right? Ritualizing empty mechanics will get you indifference, yeah? But ritualizing meaning gets you devotion. And I know which one I want. So Strat Days are awesome, especially when they're designed to transform something that can only be done in person. Getting people together is key. But if you're expecting that one day to carry all of the decisions, all of the alignment, and all the energy for the next 12 months, tell him he's dreaming. When you design your next Strat Day, think of it as the start of a 12-month journey, okay, that you're going to rekindle, because everybody leaves and they need clarity on it, right? They need to know how the fuel is going to be added to keep the fire burning, right? Who's responsible for adding the fuel, and where and when they're going to be coming back together around the fire, so that they can make a commitment to it and you can hold that commitment. So the question usually arises now, what if the day's already happened and you haven't got this stuff in play? What do you do post fact, right? First, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should stop gathering your people. Absolutely, you need to fucking gather your people, right? I love it. I'm actually leaning into it even more now because it's the one thing that AI cannot synthesize. But the gatherings can't be the only thing. They can't be the only thing that holds culture together. There needs to be a way to carry the alignment, to carry the ownership and the energy of the team forward, regardless of the day, of any one day, right? So that the team sticks together, that the team becomes glue on glue, that the energy remains and grows even stronger, especially after everyone leaves the room. So the goal isn't to eliminate Strat Days or gathering. It is to eliminate the need for the next gathering to rescue the culture. So if you want to know, if you want to see how to build a culture that hums, where strategy, culture, and brand are not being continually carried and re-energized by the charismatic leader on the strategy day, watch the electromagnetic brand plan. Watch that next. It'll show you how to connect the foundations that allow your team to carry the strategy, the culture, the brand together without waiting for the next big gathering to relight the fire, or depending on, like I said, the charisma or the energy of the leader. So watch that next. The link is in the description. Until next time, be unapologetically awesome. Bye for now.